Alex.
Hey John, how are you?
Hey, brother. How's it going?
Good, man. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Phuket, Thailand. 6 a.m.
Oh, nice.
So I just got
That's awesome.
just pressed out a coffee, so just getting going.
Good deal. I'm gonna actually refill my water. Yeah, I love Thailand. Beautiful.
You been down to Phuket?
Yeah, I was there 7 months ago.
Nice. Just on vacay or business?
Yeah, yeah, vacation. It was good.
Yeah,
Are you?
I can't complain. I like it a lot here.
Nice. How long have you lived there for?
Um, I mean, I don't know. I've been kind of mobile the last year and a half, but I've been here full time since April. And then
Okay.
I was here twice in 2018, and so I spent the summer of 2018 in an RV driving around Europe, and then I finished off here and for a month, and then just decided to come back. My girlfriend's here, so it's
Nice.
yeah, it's a good place to be. You're in New York, right?
Yeah, yeah. I,
Yeah.
I love it here too.
You're not from there originally though, right? You're from, I think I heard, North Carolina. Is that right?
Yeah, born and raised in North Carolina, and then I came here, like hopped all over like the Midwest, and then finally made my way here about 5.5 years ago.
You like it there?
I love it. It's my favorite city in the world. But I do love traveling, and I do love like I think that I love like Thai food, and I love Japanese culture. Love parts of Europe.
Yeah.
There's like so many places in the world that I think every once in a while I like to get out a little bit and explore.
Yeah, man, I'm pretty much the same, but I kind of sheepishly have to admit that I've never been to New York. It's just,
Really?
I don't know how it's not happened, but been to South America, Southeast Asia, East Asia, Africa, just haven't made it to New York yet.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to choose that. It's
someday.
yeah, New York's great. It's just like unbelievable. It's just like there's so many cultures here. There's so much life and energy and excitement. Smart people. It's really. I mean, it's my favorite city.
Yeah, I think part of it for me, man, was when I was, well, as soon as I finished university, I, I thought China was the future, right? And so I wanted to be in Shanghai because I thought, going to Shanghai would be like going to New York in the early 1900s sort of thing. And I mean, you can't really argue that China's going to, be a huge deal in the future, right? Despite current turmoil. But I'm starting to feel like, so I kind of, in my mind, I was like, uh, a place like New York, like the big hustle and bustle city, is kind of old news. But I don't know, for whatever reason, but the last 12 months, my mind has changed on that. I don't know if it's because opportunity is seeming like it's going to be a less localized thing. Like maybe it'll be more dispersed, or maybe it'll be more. I don't know, but that's just kind of my feeling that it's kind of like reemerged, at least in my mind, as like, okay, this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I think I avoided it for that reason. Just I thought like Shanghai and China was like the bee's knees, and I think it's kind of turning out that maybe that was a somewhat incorrect assumption.
Yeah. I've never been to Shanghai, but I think that there's like too much government control, and I think there's like it definitely is the future. I don't know if it's the future I would want to live in, and it's just like it's a lot of it's scary. I think like when I hear like horror stories of that, it's like I like to be able to think that we can do anything, we can build anything, we can go really high, like get higher. And I think in like the more I've traveled, the more people I've worked with internationally, like yes, you can. There's a lot that you can do anywhere in the world, but being in a place where there's like more smart people, where there's more like money, that's just gonna be like the root of creation, and
Yeah.
it's gonna disseminate from there. And prior, it would like disseminate from like either just in SF or just in New York. But now, yeah, I think you're right. Is like there's all these like other cities now that are all interconnected, that we're just gonna live in seemingly this like distributed world. But there still will be like hubs where a lot of like the root of these companies are.
Yeah, and I miss that. Like, I guess that's kind of exactly what I'm saying. Over the last 12 months, I've really shifted toward more lifestyle considerations for where I'm living. But, missing that kind of like all the interactions that you would have in a place like New York or some of the major centers where you're meeting smart, educated, motivated, creative, interesting people all the time. Like that's something you don't get living across the street from the beach, as nice as it is, right? But anyways, Alex,
Yeah.
what I want to do today, if it's cool with you, is just have a general chat about Lolly and what you're doing and your kind of story. And then the other half, we'll just break into some kind of sequential rapid fire questions, and then we can take it from there.
Sounds good, man. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
So I know I've listened to a number of podcasts over the last couple of days, heard the Lolly story, and I'll get you to describe what Lolly is just in your own words, and then we can go further from there.
Great. Yeah. So Lolli is very simple. It's a Bitcoin rewards company that gives you free Bitcoin when you shop online. We've partnered with over 950 merchants that pay us when our users shop their sites. And so then we pass that money back in Bitcoin to their Lolli wallets. People can earn on average like 7% back from these merchants. So there's like significant deals to different places like to earn. That's basically the synopsis of what Lolli is, and then clearly like a long story how we got here.
Sure, it's a pretty simple concept, and as is so often the case in this space, there's so many companies and people doing so much cool stuff. Like you hear about a new product or service, and you get it, and you're like, oh, that's super cool, and then like you move on. And in the course of listening to some of the other podcasts, and you touched on this in most of them, it's actually a way bigger deal than I had originally thought. Like like a rewards program sort of company, it's super cool and it pays BTC instead of rewards points or whatever. But when you consider the fact that the sticking point, everyone always talks about the gap between the adoption gap. Like what is that kind of, how can we close that gap between people that have heard about it and are interested in it, but just like, I don't know which wallet to use. I don't know which exchange to use. If I get it, how do I store it? I'm unsure about that, all that kind of stuff. And Lolly is basically coming along and saying, don't change anything about your life. Install this extension, live your life, done. And just accumulate, stack sats as a result of doing your normal thing. We'll take care of making the decision about wallet and storage and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, for each one of those things, Lolly's not a perfect solution, but it gets the ball rolling in all those regards. And then once people start to become familiar with having it and how it works and receiving it and possibly sending some, then they've just by default crossed that kind of like chasm between being a non-coiner and a coiner, and then they can figure out, which kind of rabbit hole they want to go on from there. But it's like I didn't initially realize how big of a deal it was, but it's huge.
Thank you. I appreciate you like listening to the podcast and also really seeing it. I think it's really exciting. We're sort of like flipping how the fiat world existed, but recreating the patterns that we saw. So in the fiat world, we saw early days. PayPal comes out, credit cards are used more easily, and people can pay more simply. And then rewards programs have evolved over the years to encourage people to spend online or to spend with different cards or different services. We're sort of reversing that model and saying, look, like people don't want to pay with Bitcoin. It is right now a store of value.
Yeah.
So there's no real incentive for merchants to accept it, and there's no real incentive for people to spend it. So where's the activity? And so earning and cashback model, which is already a proven business model that we know very well from our time at Ebates, we said, well, let's recreate that. And because that model works and it fits within the principles of what people want out of Bitcoin.
Right.
The merchants want new customers. They want to test the waters with Bitcoin. And then the consumer wants to accumulate Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is very, very difficult to get unless you're a miner or an investor. So it solves these two very big issues with the distribution and education of Bitcoin with as you're right, a simple model that then evolves into something way greater.
Yeah, and I remember when I first got into Bitcoin, and you were I guess we all were encouraged to like play around with it, spend some, like send some, that kind of thing. And I mean,
Yeah.
we all probably look back at that time now and we're like, fuck, like we probably were a
Yeah.
little bit more loose with from some Bitcoin that we want than we would be now, all things considered. But if we were able to start from a place of pretty much just getting some by default of our normal life, I mean, it's such a, of course, early adopters, we have to kind of bear the brunt of the early mistakes in everything. So fair play, and there's some upside, right? But I just think it's such a better way to getting that initial, like getting your toes wet initially. And so many people, I'm sure you've had this happen in your life over the last several years, will ask you, like, what is this Bitcoin stuff, and like how can I get involved? And before, it had to be like a long drawn out conversation, like be really careful once you get it, don't leave it on exchanges, and like it was kind of a painful conversation, and as a result maybe you had less of them or you just didn't want to engage in them. But now you can just say, download lolli.
Yeah. 30 seconds.
You're there.
There you are. You're stacking sats. You're earning Bitcoin. It's almost like one thing. So my last company was acquired by Ebates, and we worked there. Our team, same team as last company. One of the things that we like learned is, to this day, people still don't understand how Ebates works. It just seems like this magic thing, and so many people just say like it's like too good to be true.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think the biggest thing we're trying to educate people is like this is a model that has been working for 20 years. That is a real company that it distributes a lot of cash. We can distribute a lot of Bitcoin, and it is so simple that it almost feels like too good to be true.
Yeah, and I'm not, in my excitement, I'm not trying to shill for lolli, but I really think it's such a great first step for people, and it's like it's not as though it's taking money. It's not like you taking money from you in any capacity, right? It's literally a reward in BTC. Like you're getting it, for free. You're getting what you would have bought before, as you would have anyways, and you're getting the BTC back. So, to my mind, I just want to know when you're going to be. I'm from Canada originally, and I want to know when you guys are going up there.
Yeah, so that's the most likely the next country that we're launching. So
Amazing.
We're trying to secure as many partnerships there as possible before we do. That's the biggest thing. With the technology and the legal compliance is part of it.
Yeah.
Just going, expanding internationally. But the biggest thing is establishing partnerships so that it has the same experience when you are in Canada as when you're in the U.S. So we have a lot of really good partners that we're talking with right now, and I feel pretty confident given the traction that we've had in the U.S. I feel very confident that we're going to have that same sort of excitement in Canada as well.
And there's got to be a lot of the retailers that are already on the platform that have operations in Canada. Would that make, they'll probably come on the Canadian platform as well?
Yeah, and that's part of it. So there's like some merchants that are already on the platform that have presences in Canada. They do have different teams, and so you have to talk with the new team and the new decision maker, so you have to navigate.
Yeah.
With my last company, we primarily worked with a lot of these merchants, but we worked with the U.S. merchants, not so much the Canadian merchants. So we are trying to like leverage the partnerships, leverage the what we've done and expand there. But we really just started expanding there. We've had to build like the technology to support it. And then we've had to do a lot of like legal compliance to make sure that we're not going there and then getting like, cease and desist or being potentially like arrested
right.
by there. So got to like, dot the I's and cross the T's on that front.
Yeah. What kind of compliance is required for a service like lolli? So if we break it down, the model kind of works. You approach the retailers, you pitch them by effectively saying, I have this group of people that would be motivated by a certain type of reward. We're providing that reward, Bitcoin. So and it's on that basis that you negotiate kickbacks from them, and then you take part of it and you pass, and then you convert part of it to Bitcoin and pass it on to your users, right?
Correct. But when you go into a new country, they have new laws about how they handle rebates, how they handle any like the U.S. does not consider us a money transmitter because no one's buying and selling Bitcoin, so we don't fit the checkboxes that are required for that.
Yeah.
But Canada, I mean, luckily Canada operates very similarly, but like we have to have a statement saying this is what we do, this is how we operate, and like, yeah, so that to make sure that we're like doing everything the right way.
Yeah. And do you see on either the U.S. operation or anywhere in the future, like, will this be like available for, I guess, SME sort of retailer like Costco and Cisco and places like that, where you've got restaurants doing purchases, or like, will it be available for that, or is it always going to be more like individual consumer facing retailers on the platform?
I think it'll really be like what our customers demand. So, we're super active on Twitter, and people are always asking for new merchants that some of them like weren't even on Ebates when we were there. And so we're constantly reaching out to new merchants that have not played in this space before, but see us as a way to attract new users. And then we also have a lot of like young, cool millennial brands that are not on Ebates either, because they don't want to like cheapen the brand with cash back from another company. Whereas our company is more around like financial literacy, Bitcoin education, and financial empowerment. So the brand fits a lot better with a lot of the merchants that have chosen to go with us over certain cashback companies.
Right.
So I won't say like, Cisco and like restaurant services, it could be like a really interesting avenue. One of our biggest is Office Depot and Office Max, and a lot of people are using it for their office of like, stacking sats when they buy office supplies if they run like a small business. That's something that has been like really successful for a lot of people. So I'd love to add company travel. Like right now, we work with Booking.com, Hotels.com, Priceline, but it'd be great to add like Concur or something like that is doing company travel to let people stack when they're traveling for work.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I want to add. Like our mobile app that we just started working on. The whole idea is how do we make Bitcoin part of someone's everyday life?
Yeah.
So walking into the store and like getting your coffee and going and getting your Uber or your Lyft or whatever you choose to do, taking these moments and that would be a part of your daily life and attaching Bitcoin to it and creating this ritual around stacking sats, earning Bitcoin.
Yeah. Just listening to you describe it, man, and I'm super frugal, right? Like I usually only spend on things that, the essentials basically. I don't like wasting money. But I can see that like kind of that faucet loosening a bit if I knew in the back of my mind or in the fore of my mind that if I'm going out and buying stuff like, wow, I'm going to get 7% back in sats for this. Like I can see myself being like looser with my spending just because I have such an affinity or desire to stack,
Yeah, I think there's like it's our responsibility not to push too hard on like people buying. I tweet this out every once in a while, just like buy only what you need because it can be addicting, and we do not want to be this like, this dopamine rush or this heroin of Bitcoin, because like stacking sats, it feels good. There's only 21 million of these things, and we're trying, like everybody wants some, and we're giving people a really easy way to do it. But at the end of the day, like, if you don't buy like if there's something you don't need and you don't buy it, you could potentially be using that to go buy more Bitcoin. So
right.
I think for the ecosystem to evolve and for us to be like a good, partner and also just a good company in the space and not be evil. I do think there's a lot that we need to be doing that is encouraging people to buy what they need or buy things that they really do want, and that like, but not to just do it just to do it,
sure.
just to stack sats.
Sure.
But I mean, when you do the math, like if you average like 7% across all your purchases every year, you should hypothetically be able, if you really wanted to, spend like, let's just say 5% more and get some things that you would want and know that Bitcoin is going to accumulate and potentially be worth more. And so you have more of like a easier way of life, and you can think about stacking sats at every moment, and I think that's a net good thing.
Well, man, it's always awesome to be to be involved in a company where it's literally, if the option is available to you, like if the retailers are in your area or they provide services in your area or whatever, you'd be insane not to use it. Like to be
Yes.
in a company that has that proposition, like you would be insane not to use us. That's a pretty cool place to be at, right? Like if you I know you did the Safeway deal somewhat recently, right?
Yeah.
Like if you buy your groceries at Safeway and you're not getting, I don't know what the commission on Safeway purchases is, if it's like 4% or 7 or whatever it is, but if you're not using that, you're insane. You know, like it's free money you're leaving on the table every day when you go buy your groceries or your dinner or whatever.
Yeah, so it's like 3.5% back on groceries, and people spend thousands and thousands of dollars on groceries. So,
Yeah.
yeah, imagine, at the end of the year having hundreds of dollars of Bitcoin, and if you joined us early, Bitcoin was at like 3,800, and so those people, hypothetically would have, maybe a few $1,000s in Bitcoin just by buying groceries. So it's we want to bring on more merchants like Safeway that are doing things that are daily experiences, things that you need. And I think to answer your question, the psychology around lowering time preference that Bitcoin naturally attracts is really interesting, because what it also does is it lowers the preference for thinking about what you need. And we find people will actually go to Lolli first, think about the purchase, find the best retailer to buy from, and then make the purchase and get sats back. Whereas before, they might have made like an impulse purchase. They would have like had a thought, they had like a high time preference. They might have shopped at like Amazon versus like shopping around for the best deal and the Bitcoin back. So I think it's actually training a really savvy shopper to consider a lot of different things, and also to lower their time preference about how much they spend, when they spend, and how much they're earning back at these different merchants.
Yeah. Well, man, like everything that Bitcoin touches, it has this magical impact on people's behavior that just seems to, in most cases, like change their behavior for the better, in a variety of different ways. I did want to ask you though, I noticed that like Trip.com was one of the retailers, and I'm not singling them out. I just mean like online retailers that serve an international market. Like would I still be able to earn sats back if I use Trip.com, like I have an account there and stuff like that, or do I have to be right now U.S. citizen or U.S. address or anything like that?
So it's sort of a sensitive subject. Like legally, we have to be U.S. only. It's tough to know that we have a lot of users who are like using VPNs and sort of like tricking or like trying to figure their way out, and so we cannot support international. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you can figure out a way to use it internationally, we just can't. Like my whole thing with product is I want to provide the best possible experience. I want it to work 100% of the time. And in the US, it works 100% of the time with all of our merchants. If you are using it outside the US, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, we're not going to be like if you're stacking sats and you're figuring out a way to do it, like it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm not going to be mad.
Right.
Like I kind of want everyone to have Bitcoin. But it's at the same time, it's more about like our merchants can be like, might not reward you because you're not in the US.
Right.
Like technically right now, our merchants, we have agreements where it's all US individuals that shop get rewarded. And so what has happened is we've had a lot of users internationally that have like figured out ways, they've gotten creative. I'm sure you can like fill in the dots to like show that they're in the US, or to work with some of our merchants that do have international programs. But because we can't advertise internationally yet, having like there are merchants that we have that technically serve Thailand and they serve Japan, they serve all these other places, but we can't go there with like 5 merchants and expect to have any sort of market penetration. And we also, to support those in the masses would be very difficult. So yeah, that's sort of my stance right now.
But I guess what I'm asking is like, when the merchant records the purchase as being eligible for a reward through Lolli, Like, do they look at the IP, the shipping address? Like, what is it that they use to confirm that a reward is a purchase is eligible for a reward?
Some do, some don't. It really depends. It's like some merchants are like right now our agreement that we have 100% that I vouch by. We reward even if it doesn't work or whatever. Is all U.S. purchases. That's what we can get behind. There's so many exclusions that multiply when you go into other countries, where some merchants that are like, they only reward first-time purchasers if you are in Thailand, or they only reward for flights if you're in Japan. So there's all of these like exclusions, and if you can imagine when you have 1,000 merchants and each of them has different exclusions for every country, that number starts to like multiply the amount of databases you have to maintain and also support with your support team and everything like that.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons why we aren't truly like 100% supporting international. There's the legal side. There's the just like logistics of it. There's the partnerships. But we've done really, really well in the U.S., and that's why we're expanding to Canada, and that's why we're expanding to more places over the next year. And we've had an incredible amount of international support. So, I think we'll get everywhere eventually, and kind of like, use at your own risk until then.
Right,
if you are
right.
international.
What's kind of like if we're trying to assess, Lolli's been operating for a year, right? Last August is when you launched?
Yeah.
11
months. Coming on a year.
So, I mean, can you share any data, and just in terms of, for example, like how much BTC have you paid out or something like that, just to get an idea for scale of like the impact thus far?
I mean, we've driven millions and millions of dollars of sales. We have tens of thousands of users on the platform that are earning, like active users. And let's see, what are some other stats we can share? 20, like an average wallet size of, and this is also including like our newer users, which is, it's backloaded because we're growing exponentially. But the average user has already earned $26 in Bitcoin. Which if you take the actual average, it's like, that's pretty crazy to think about, like how many people we're introducing to Bitcoin and that have a pretty like $26 as an average is like pretty good. So if you do like a non sort of weighted average, like that, there's a lot of people who have earned a lot of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Just by like changing their habits and shopping at lolli merchants.
Yeah. And also I heard you say on another podcast that, and this is again just so indicative of Bitcoin and the industry, and it's another one of the awesome things about it. But you're actually, obviously, when you work with merchants, they have an incentive to pay you a commission to bring them a new customer, even though it reduces their ultimate take. But their kind of premise is that it's a customer they wouldn't have had otherwise, so they're paying you a commission for bringing them a new customer. But you also mentioned that certain brands, I think it was a clothing brand that you mentioned before, you've mentioned a number of times in a couple of different interviews, but basically brands that have like a really kind of strong stance on not diluting their brand through discounts or whatever, have actually partnered with you just because of the brand strength of Lolli, but also the kind of the benefit to be derived as a brand from being connected with Bitcoin in some capacity. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the reasons why we have positioned Lolli, and this more so comes back to like Matt's my co-founder, the team's belief of Bitcoin as a future medium of exchange and store of value, and the importance of self-sovereign money and also money like decentralized currency and digital currency that doesn't need third parties. So I think that there is this larger belief that we need to educate people on what new money is. And it's why this podcast is so much needed. It's why there, like, all these different parts need to come together to educate this next generation about what their money is. And with cashback, it's just like rewards or coupons or whatever. Like there's nothing really like that exciting. It sort of cheapens the brand to have like coupons and cash back in certain ways. Whereas Bitcoin, in a lot of cases, can elevate the brand, especially when you're doing what we're doing, which is like Bitcoin education and teaching people about like the importance of it, and why everybody should own some. And so I think, yeah, that a lot of brands have gotten behind that and see the importance of it and want their shoppers to be educated and to understand like what Bitcoin is. So our brands align really well on that front.
And when you speak with these merchants and you start negotiating, there's some interest. Do merchants, retail merchants, have kind of like a flat, like if they're going to deal with a rebate company or whatever, do they have a flat commission, or is that something you negotiate based on a bunch of different metrics about the types of customers you can bring them and that kind of thing?
Yeah, everything's negotiable, I guess, with every merchant. So
right.
we try to get higher rates than our competitors in the cashback space because we are bringing more value. We are bringing a lot of financial literacy to the table, and we're sharing a lot of that with our customer, our user.
Yeah.
So I think that so far we've been able to get higher rates in a lot of cases and lower rates in others. Some merchants, they more care about volume and the type of customer that we're bringing more so than they do about the story of Bitcoin. And that's the case with most merchants. They kind of look at us as a number and they see, hey, we're bringing in X amount of $1 million in sales for you. And they treat us as such. And then the more that we drive, more sales we drive, the higher the rates get. Some merchants care about the brand and they do their research and they're like, okay, we want to align ourselves with a Bitcoin company and they want to be a Bitcoin friendly company. But it's really split across the board. Like it really depends on the merchant and who's behind it and who we're talking to there.
Right. Is there a fall off? Like you sign up a merchant and I assume, they have to commit to a certain period of time, but is there any risk that, after a year they think like, well, we've acquired that customer, or maybe it slows down, or like, is there any risk of fall off, or is it just a matter of as more users come on Lolli, obviously they're going to be kind of funneled to these retailers, and why would you fall off if that's continuing to be the case?
Yeah, it's like as long as we keep growing and as long as Bitcoin keeps growing, I think we should be fine. This is a great question though, because the merchants do care about that, and they want to see that the space is getting bigger. They want to see that we are getting bigger and we're acquiring more users, and that those users are shopping at their site as opposed to, let's just say, like Walmart wants to drive customers away from Amazon. So we have to show that our users would have primarily shopped at Amazon and now they're shopping at Walmart. Right. And so the drop off is possible. I think, like from my experience at Ebates, one of the things that like would consistently happen is merchants would get really confident and they would say, "Oh, we don't need Ebates anymore. We're like, you guys aren't driving any incrementality to us." And then they would leave Ebates. But then they would always come back because they realized like it just the model always works. Like people became loyal to Ebates, and the same way that they're becoming loyal to Bitcoin, and they don't want to leave Bitcoin. Once you've started earning Bitcoin for all your purchases, you only want to earn Bitcoin on all your purchases, as you noted. And I'm the same way. I'm guilty of it. I'm biased, but I'm like,
sure.
I have completely changed because now it's like I will not buy something if I'm not going to stack sats on it.
Right.
And so now it's like, I think that we, like our merchants see that, and so far none of them have left the platform. Jet folded into Walmart, but that had, and they just dropped their program in general with Ebates and I think everybody. But we have not had a merchant that's come on board that's been like, yeah, we're good and we're out. The space is like too exciting. We're the leader in it. And it's, I think people are just getting like really excited about how big this thing is going to be.
And what are some of, like, when you go into these negotiations or pitches with merchants to come on the platform, what are some of the reasons why they don't? Like, assuming they've had or are open to rewards programs in some capacity, what's the reason for saying no to, like, what Lolli does in particular?
Yeah, so they're really, gosh.
Nobody's really said no so far.
Yeah, if we can get in, no, there have like Amazon. I talk to them every month, and they haven't come on board.
Right.
We're just not big enough right now to like drive meaningful sales to Amazon. And Amazon has their own rewards platform, and that's what they're pushing. So they don't need to come on the platform until we're driving so much revenue to Walmart and to Sam's Club and to all their Overstock, all their competitors. So my goal is just to keep driving sales away from Amazon until eventually they come on the platform and want to join us. And then it becomes up to the consumer to say, okay, I can either earn 1% back on Amazon, or I can earn 5% back on Walmart. And then you make the decision of where you shop anyway. But it would be great to have like Amazon. It would be great to have everybody on board.
And tweet at Bezos every now and then, I hear.
What's that?
And tweet at Bezos every now and then, I hear.
Yeah. I tweet at Elon and Bezos every once in a while. I have to.
What are you saying to Elon? Get it for Tesla.
With Tesla.
Nice.
Yeah.
That would be huge.
I think so too. We've got a few users that said they would literally buy a Tesla if they could earn Bitcoin back on it. So I'm like, I've probably got like 300K in sales for him if he's down. So maybe I gotta have him on the podcast and smoke him up like Joe Rogan or something.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I think I tweeted this out the other day and Lolli picked it up, but Elon's that kind of crazy that you could see him, doing something like that on a dime, right? Just be like, yeah, this sounds cool, let's do that.
Yeah,
I don't know if they discount their product at all. I get the feeling that they don't, but who knows?
But for them, Bitcoin would be less about the discount and more about like, they would like actually convert a sale, or they would like educate people on Bitcoin. It would be like a marketing thing for them.
Right.
I think it would just be a big splash. Like if Elon tweeted out yesterday or tomorrow, hey, stacking sats with Tesla, people would go crazy.
It would be huge. Yeah, but so as far as reasons why retailers say no, like at this point, what would they be? Just you're not big enough? You mentioned that for Amazon.
It's either we're not big enough, they haven't seen how active our users are. So like I always encourage people on Twitter to just like tweet at these merchants, like get them involved, get involved in our Twitter, because I send people all of these tweets. I'm like, look, like Airbnb, you guys were the most requested merchant like this time around, and everybody wants you guys to come on the platform. And VRBO, their biggest competitor, is doing incredible on our platform. And we just keep sending all of these Airbnb customers to VRBO, and until they're like going to join, like they're just losing sales. So a lot of merchants just are hesitant to do outside loyalty programs. They want to do internal loyalty programs. Some startups are just like not able to do all the tracking and to do like payouts and that kind of thing. So it really depends. But there's not the nice thing is, I look at every merchant and I haven't heard one that has said we're not in because of Bitcoin. Like none of them have looked at us and said that, which has been really, really nice. Like there's been some that are like very curious and are fascinated with like how it works and making sure that it's not a scam. But I've never heard any merchant not join us because we were a Bitcoin company, which is a really good signal.
Right. Did the dynamic of those pitches change at all during, let's say, like December 2018, when we were kind of right at the bottom of the bear market? Like, was there any change in sentiment regarding, the people that you were speaking with?
Yeah, it was interesting launching in a bear market. I don't think a lot of people like talk about that. It's there was a good thing, which a lot of the scammers cleared out, and there was a lot less noise. But there was also some like negative sentiments outside that, there were merchants that were a little hesitant given what they had heard. And then when I talked to them about the principles and got them on board, then they understood the significance of it. But and they saw like, hey, like wasn't Bitcoin didn't Bitcoin go from like 19,000 to 4K, and like what does that mean and all that sort of stuff. And so there was a little hesitation around like price and like how we did that or how we what we did there. But it was nice launching in the bear market because it was kind of quiet. Like there weren't a lot of there still are not very many competitors, which has been really good. It's let us like get really far out ahead and be like the winner in the space. and then also develop these deep partnerships with these merchants where those are like difficult to replace. Like if competitors came out and they were to like compete with us, they would have to fight our relationships and our rates, which I think are difficult because a lot of these merchants have chosen us as like their Bitcoin company.
Right.
So having over 950 merchants that are like their Bitcoin play has been a really nice thing. So there's been like a lot of really good things about like launching in a bear market that we would not have had if we had launched like during the craziness. We kind of launched at like when it was at around 4,000, and then it's gone up since.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, that's one of the huge benefits is that you get all your initial users on the platform, and then they get to experience like a 3-4x, within a few months. I mean, what better? You couldn't ask for a better initial result for your users, right?
Exactly. There's like immediate validation, and like all of our early users are then telling their friends about it because they earned all this Bitcoin.
Right.
Whereas if you came in, if we had launched at like 19,000 and they earned all this Bitcoin there, and then it dropped, they're going to be it's just like they're not going to be that pumped.
Right.
But if they're earning it now it's going up. It's been really good for our users.
Yeah. I mean, man, all this is super positive, and I mean, it really seems like the future is bright for you guys. Is there any risk that this model will change? Like, is there anything on the horizon that you guys see that the rewards model changes or anything like that? Or is this a pretty established industry for a number of years to come?
Ebates has been around for 20 years. They've evolved the model quite a bit, but I don't see it going anywhere. Everybody wins with this model. So
you don't see free money really a service that provides free money really going out of demand,
Yeah, like maybe merchants like cut back their rates in the future if we truly aren't growing or if we aren't bringing new users, or I guess if Bitcoin is not what we think it is and can be,
right.
Then that changes. But right now, I mean, there's a reason why we're super focused on Bitcoin and Bitcoin only, and why that's so important. We want to establish credibility with all parties, and Bitcoin is the one that I have the most trust in, that has proven its value to society over time. So where I think a lot of people like might launch companies that might be playing around different tokens, different spaces, like this is about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the most valuable cryptocurrency and store of value and future medium of exchange. And so the more that we can do to distribute that and to educate people on that, like with this rewards model, the better. And we also, on our end, will be diversifying to other rewards models that are not just like online cash back. We'll be doing mobile cash back. We'll be doing card-linked offers. We'll be doing lending. There's all these types of ways where people can earn more Bitcoin and stack more sats that will diversify our reliance on one model to have and to own.
Right. Now I want to ask you about a recent, I don't know if controversy is the right word, a minor controversy on Twitter where the stack sats TM issue. What was that all about?
Yeah, it was a big misunderstanding, but I'm glad we cleared it up. I think it was interesting. People thought we trademarked stacking sats, and I think there was a lot of armchair lawyers out there that thought they understood what trademarking is, and they didn't. For one, we didn't trademark anything. Two, we had the legal advice to say you need to establish certain marks that you're using in commerce. Stacking sats we have been the biggest in the stacking sats movement. There's been so many people that have done it around different companies, but we've really gone out and really advertised stacking sats. It's one of our biggest marketing terms. It's one of the best memes in the space.
Yeah.
And so in order to sorry, one sec. In order to really capture that value and defend it for our users and the Bitcoin community, our counsel. One sec. I'm not sure what that sound is. Okay. So in order to defend the mark in commerce and not have a malicious third party come out and say, you can't use this. And then for us to go like spend all these legal dollars in defending it, we established the mark in commerce. People got mad about it because they thought that we were trying to stop people from using it, and that was simply not the case. So I'm sure you saw like our tweet storm that was just like, "Hey, giant misunderstanding. Like this is what we're actually doing. We're actually trying to defend the term for the community." But it's one of those things like once the Twitter mob like goes after something and believes something as truth without any evidence or anything, it's really tough to like defend that.
Yeah.
So Marty and Matt are friends of mine and the company's. They've been huge believers in stacking sats from day one and big supporters. And Matt was one of the first people to really coin the term. And he, I called him up and I was like, "Hey man, I am so sorry for the misunderstanding. Like we at some point we need to like, think about how do we defend this in more formal matter for all of us."
Yeah.
But right now, like there's nothing going on. You can like look at the trademark office. Like if we had filed something, it's public information.
Right.
So there's not, it was a strange interaction. I think it's part like outrage culture of just like going out there. And then one thing that a lot of people couldn't see is that there was a lot of like altcoins and people who were just sort of like angry at the Bitcoin community that riled it up. And like it may have looked like it was a bigger deal than it was because like there was a lot of people who were like anti-Bitcoin that were like retweeting it and sharing it and being like, "Oh, Bitcoin's up in arms." It's like, it wasn't that big of a deal at the end of the day. Everybody was like, once we cleared things up, it was done after like a few hours. People were like, "Okay, that's fine." Matt cleared it up with all his followers and it was all good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you said, everybody likes a good controversy, and the BTC community is a very protective of their baby sort of community. But what does establishing the mark in commerce mean? Like when you say that's what Lolli was doing, you weren't trademarking it, but like what does that mean? Just means that like nobody can co-opt it in the future, or
that nobody can stake claim to the mark as their own and not let us continue to use that to use it.
Right.
So we like if somebody, let's just say,
so you're not that doesn't prohibit anybody else from using it. It just means nobody can prohibit anybody from using it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So if somebody tried to like stake claim to a trademark around stacking sats, a good legal team would see that we established using that in commerce and like on our website, in our social media, and that if somebody else came along, like we would be able to defend ourselves saying like, "No, they don't have the rights to own that term. We've been using it since this date." Right. And that's why our team put that on our website to establish it in commerce.
And so, but was there ever a TM next to it on your website? Was that just kind of like a cheeky, like kind of a joke?
Yeah, so putting a trademark on something doesn't mean putting a TM on something doesn't mean it has a trademark. Right. It can say like, this is like a mark in commerce, so that it was distinguishable from saying we're stacking sats, or let's stack some sats. And if we said that in passing on social media, it's different than like saying in capital letters stacking sats on our website, saying we're not using this in passing. Like it would be like just do it. A million people said just do it before Nike ever coined the term or said like just do it. Like people have always said just do it. But Nike, like plenty of people have used that, but did they establish it in commerce? And so now Nike, has said like we established that in commerce, and they have the trademark to it. And imagine if someone tried to do that where a company had already been using just do it in commerce.
Yeah. All right.
The issue was that like there's people. So Matt Odell is one of them. Matt Odell had been using it a lot about us and about Cash App, but he had never used it in commerce because he was using it as an individual. So and then like Cash App, I don't think ever used it themselves. And so we and probably a few other companies were using it. But if a company came along and tried to do what we were like accused of maliciously, and then they won because someone like didn't do their research or didn't see the mark in commerce, then that gets really that gets really scary of what someone could do with that.
Right. Got you. You know, it was interesting also the kind of approach to social media that was on display from Lolli during this whole time. And I heard you discuss this on another podcast, and I think it's indicative of, you know, what's really cool about today, especially companies that are aligned, you know, that are really genuine about the product and service and industry that they're in. You know, so for you guys, obviously you're true believers in BTC, Bitcoin. You want to, you know, you don't want to foster mainstream adoption. And I think what that allows brands to do is like be really personal with their, you know, with Twitter and with their marketing and branding sort of departments. And, you know, if you looked at Lolli's Twitter during this time, and it's all, you know, it's always been kind of that way, but it was really on display that like it just sounded like a person was on the other end of the Twitter account, not like a managed PR sort of thing, right? Can you talk about like your approach?
It's just me.
Yeah, exactly. So like, what's your approach to PR and branding and marketing in a, you know, in an environment where you don't need to hide anything and you're so aligned with the product and service you're providing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a belief about like just the future companies. They need to feel like people. They need to be people. Like the Lolli Twitter account is just me. Like it's just I could be tweeting out from my personal account for all, you know, for like, you know, all intents and purposes. Like I think that it needed to feel like how I wanted to interact with Bitcoin for the first time. I think that Bitcoin has been very unapproachable, and I think it's very confusing. And there's things that have worked for it that worked for us. And I think memes are an incredibly powerful tool to educate people while they don't feel educated. So, or they don't feel like they are being educated.
Right.
So, like all these, like stacking sats, for instance. If you were to break down stacking sats as a meme, it's one of the most incredible things in the world because it's teaching somebody about like your stack. It's for one, the alliteration's brilliant. Two, sats. People will say, well, what are sats? How am I like what is this? So then you learn satoshis. So then you learn that how like Bitcoin can be talked about and broken down and the different nomenclatures of Bitcoin. And then you realize that you don't have to own a full Bitcoin. You can own a bunch of satoshis and Bitcoin can be broken down from there. And so there's like all these
and it's worth to own in super small amounts. The insinuation there, it's like
because it still has gone up.
Yeah.
Whether you own a Satoshi or whether you own a Bitcoin, those have all gone up in value, and that's important to understand. And this idea that there's only 21 million of them, and you have to stack them all, and it's just like, you know, you're stacking them and
dude,
going.
It's even changed my, like, you know, I don't need to be sold on Bitcoin. You know, I've been down the rabbit hole for a long time, but even me, when that, as a result of that meme, I'm like, I stack more because of that meme.
Yeah, it's so real, and I think that people that are coming into the space are thinking about it now.
Yeah.
So, and it's not just that meme. It's like it's a bunch of other memes, but companies have to feel real and they have to feel good when you interact with them, because at the end of the day, like, you know, we don't want to interact with this like faceless brand. We want to interact with a person.
Yeah.
We want to feel like we're being heard. And I just like, you know, I started tweeting out like, you know, when we launched, and I just did it from the hip of like what I was feeling, what I thought was funny. You know, what like I was laughing at.
Yeah.
And then so sure, like some of the stuff that we post are like absolutely ridiculous, and we have like, you know, really stupid and funny memes. But a lot of the stuff that we do, we couple it with like education, and we teach our users about Bitcoin and why it's important in a variety of ways.
Yeah, man, I definitely think the community and the people that are consuming whatever those outputs are really appreciate like the genuineness and authenticity. Like, and I think, yeah, I just think they really appreciate it. And I think it goes back to that thing which I mentioned at the beginning of our chat, is that, you know, Bitcoin seems to inspire this sort of behavior in people. Like it seems to be this thing that inspires you to be more genuine, or maybe the truth of Bitcoin inspires like truth in the people that engage with it in some weird way that's like not fully fleshed out in my mind, but just like it's such a pure thing that if you're going to be involved in it, I feel like it pushes you to reflect that purity. And I know that's like a pretty, I
No,
don't
I
know.
love that. I think that is so true. There's this like once you get the bug and once you learn, then it's like you just get it. You want to share it. You want to like evangelize it, and it's a crazy thing.
Right. And if
It
you
just makes
caught
sense.
if you caught yourself being kind of like overly textbook PR with, let's say, for example, your company Twitter account, I feel like you just feel icky. You'd be like, this is not what Bitcoin's about. Like Bitcoin is about being open and honest and like talking how you want to talk and expressing yourself in the way you want to express. And I know there's an inclination to credit Bitcoin for like every good thing that's happening, in your life or the world. But it's the funniest thing. Like you have this open decentralized protocol, value transfer, blah blah blah, whichever way you want to describe it, and somehow it's having this like insidious effect on so many different areas, something that you would have thought was completely unrelated, like it's self-expression or communication, but it's impacting even that.
Exactly. It's really yeah. I think it's changing how companies are being formed. They have to be more open. They have to be held accountable. If a company did come out with a malicious intent to take away, like let's just say stacking sats or any sort of meme in the space, they would just be crucified. Like imagine if that was the case. Like we are creating a free market, like both with the technologies that we're creating, but then also with the ethos of the companies that we're creating around it. Like I had a call with a few other CEOs of Bitcoin companies about the need to do something to defend these marks in commerce, and that there's something we need to do to like work together. And these are some of these people are like potential competitors. Some of these people are like complementary companies. But everybody came together and was like, what you brought up was like a really big thing. Like we were trying to establish that like yes, you have to work within the laws of your state that you're in, the nation that you're in. That is the truth of like the world that we're in. We can't just like destroy all laws. We have to like work within them. But then how do we protect ourselves, and how do we build this future group of companies with the ethos that and like building the future that we want to live in, while still like pushing innovation and pushing governments to change and making the world a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I just think, the community is so anti-bullshit, and that's a direct result of Bitcoin's mystique, or the impact it has on people. And I think the companies and brands and individuals that embody that the most stand to gain the most, because obviously it insinuates that you're doing that with your product and service, and that's your approach to your customers and support and everything, right? So if you see it in one capacity, you're kind of inclined to think that it exists in others. And I think we're going into a future where, like, as Lolli has kind of done, brand expression and brand communication, that kind of stuff is really coming down to like a way more personal level. Not everything's going to be like manicured for proper impact by a PR agency and all that kind of stuff. It's just like it's a recognition that behind this company is a bunch of people, a bunch of passionate, honest, genuine, motivated, excited people. And why not communicate with those directly rather than acting like you're some big monolithic entity that needs to have everything properly articulated all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think when like the whole stacking sats thing happened, I mean, I just like, I was literally on a phone call when it happened, and I was like, no way. Are people really, like, people thought we trademarked this thing? And so I just started like, I don't know if you saw the tweets, but I was like, LOL, trademark. Lolli, trademark.
I did see
Like,
that.
like do your own research, trademark, or whatever it was. Like I don't know. Like I think that's how I would have tweet. Like that's how I tweet. Like
Yeah.
I think we were just, and I think that it sort of like broke some of the tension, I think, to start, and then we clearly came out with our statement being just like look guys, like this is how the world works, and this is like what we did, and this and everyone was okay with it. They just wanted the source of truth, and so we had to tell everyone what we did.
Yeah. Speaking of source of truth, and this is the last question, then we'll get into the rapid fire. But are you okay on time? You got?
Yeah, I got five more minutes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was listening to another one of your podcasts. I think it was on Tales from the Crypt, and you guys were you're having a few drinks and kind of getting into like, and which is odd. This is exactly what we're talking about, where you can be yourself because the product and service you're engaged in stands on its own, But the quote I extracted from it was, "I get fucked up every day with truth, and I love it." You said that on the podcast, right? And it resonated with me because I guess I'm exactly the same. Like I contemplate these things, like what is truth and what's the relation, the truth shall set you free, and all these different concepts of truth and how they relate to things you're doing in your life. But if at all, could you put some more meat on that statement?
Yeah, good pullback. I'm trying to think of like was it? Was it when we were talking about religion, or was it when we were talking? What was?
I mean, I honestly think it was a mixed bag of like you were talking about Bitcoin and religion. You were just like, man,
oh yeah,
I get fucked up every day with truth, and I love it.
Yeah, yeah, man. I think kind of that's just my personality. Naturally, I'm like a very curious person. I did a lot of research, I guess, over the last couple of years in just trying to find what truth is. And I kept coming back to Hume. Can encourage everyone to like read a little Hume. Like not super exciting, but it's like really interesting, and it's especially if you're someone who's like searching for truth at any moment. So yeah, I think that I am constantly trying to find what is real, and that's what led me to question what money is. It's what led me to question what religion is. It leads me to question everything. Yeah. And I wish I had all the answers, and I don't, but I am constantly looking for the answers and trying to find the truth. I'm always doing my research, always looking for what is real. And I think this world is like, there's a scarcity on truth. There's like scarcity on what do we know is as fact. I mean, every day I feel like there's something that comes out in the news where I'm like, well, geez, I thought that was like, the theory of relativity, or I thought that was like a principle of the world. I thought that was like gravity. And then you realize like you knew nothing. And so I think it's important to like, just as humans, that should and can evolve constantly. Like we should constantly be asking and questioning everything and getting fucked up on truth every day. So I try to. I mean, I feel like maybe some days I just need to focus and like go call 10 merchants and like really just focus and not question everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a good exercise to constantly be questioning things and constantly be asking important questions. And that arguably is the most important. One of the biggest reasons with money right now of like why Bitcoin has not been so pervasive and why like people are not asking enough questions. People don't understand money. Yeah. And that's a really important factor of society. People need to understand what money is and where it comes from.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think that's an affinity that a lot of people in the Bitcoin space share. And I think it's also one of the reasons why we're seeing kind of the weird, fucked up behavior in certain elements of society today is because people aren't humble enough to live kind of in the question and have cemented themselves in different camps of thinking, and as a result, of course, there's going to be clashes, and people just, I think would benefit a lot from being more comfortable with living in that question mark and being like, I'm interested in everything, strong opinions, loosely held. I'm always open to have my mind changed. And again, I think that's why Bitcoin, people in the Bitcoin community like interacting with each other so much, because there is that kind of underlying like ethos, I guess.
Totally agree.
Yeah, but what you're just saying. Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like so many people in the space like have that ethos, have that like view of life, and I love that.
Yeah, me too. And okay, I'm going to hit you with these rapid fire questions. You can answer as short or as long as you like. And the first one actually is, and I know this is a big question, but you just touched on it. What is money?
Money is what we believe has value in society.
Okay. If you had to explain Bitcoin to your grandmother, what would you say?
Bitcoin is new money. It's digital money that lets everyone in the world have access to the same money, and it gives everyone in the world the ability to transfer that money with each other, free of any third parties.
How long after you heard about Bitcoin did you purchase it?
I think it was a year to a year and a half after, and that I started to feel comfortable with the idea, and I was always fascinated by the principles of it, but I wasn't quite sure as like quote unquote an investment. And I think I learned about it, and then did a bunch of research, got really fascinated by it, kept looking at it, and then finally just bought a little bit, and just to have skin in the game.
Right. Can Bitcoin be stopped? If so, what's its biggest vulnerability? If not, why not?
I don't think Bitcoin can be stopped or will ever be stopped. I don't think it will ever go to zero. I think that its biggest vulnerability right now is probably government. I think that the major governments in the world do have a lot of power in determining what money is, and governments are going to have to make a decision. Do they continue to innovate and connect the entire world, or do they defend their own nations and their own currency? I do think that it won't matter at the end of the day who fights it, because I don't believe it will be stopped, because it's just too pervasive and too powerful right now, and it's really difficult to create anything that has that sort of distribution. I think we're going to see a lot of competitors. We already have seen a lot of competitors, that a lot of things that look like Bitcoin. And I'm constantly it seems like I'm a maximalist, but I'm actually always looking for something that is better. I just haven't found it. Bitcoin is the best thing I've ever found. And I'm always looking to being proven wrong. But I look at every white paper with open eyes. I try to think about it with fresh eyes.
Right.
But the biggest factor definitely is government, because of the power that they have. If you were to make Bitcoin illegal in China, the U.S., Europe, I do think that would definitely stop a lot of people from working in the space. I think it would make it very difficult for us to build in the space if someone were to make it illegal. I go really deep into the more macro economic theories I have, but that's probably for another podcast. So we'll pick up on that.
Sure, man.
Time.
Yeah, up to you on all these answers, as long or short as you like. Okay, next one is when you have these conversations with people about Bitcoin and it's dismissed outright. What's your response?
I just encourage. I don't really try to fight it. I think I've seen enough people come around that my initial reaction is just I just always ask them. I leave them with the question of do research on what money is. You may not agree with Bitcoin. You may have things that you've heard, things that you disagree with. But the first thing that I need everyone to make sure that they understand before they 100% dismiss Bitcoin is that they understand what money is and what is in their wallet. And I think when people start to do their research, then they come back and they start to think about it. And that question, we think about money, or we think we think about money all the time because we pay for things every day, but we don't actually know what's behind it and how it works and everything like that. So once you leave that question lingering in someone's head, most people come back and they're like, I thought about it, and it is crazy to me of that how we determine what has value all over the world. And Bitcoin makes a whole lot more sense. So I've converted enough people over the course of 5 years that it was never, I don't think I still to this day, I've never told anyone to buy Bitcoin. I've always said, do your research and figure out what money is. But I encourage people to do research about Bitcoin. And I have gotten a lot of people into Bitcoin. But I don't think I've ever tried to convince anyone on the spot, or I don't even know if I have. Maybe I have convinced someone on the spot, but a lot of times it's just me putting things out into the ether, me talking about it, me continuing to spread what I love about it, and then more and more people have come to me over time to learn more about it.
Yeah, that's kind of the trump card, isn't it? Well, what's money? If someone dismisses it, they say what's money? And then I'm sure that conversation would be interesting, or they are. I've had many of them. What is your most recent aha or level up in understanding Bitcoin? We all go through these stages where we think we know it and then we learn something new. Is there anything in recent times that you've kind of like learned about it?
Oh, that's a good question. What recently? Um, I think do. Great question. I think like I mean, recently I guess is all relative. I think a year and a half ago, I was really thinking hard about what was going to disrupt Bitcoin and is Bitcoin as powerful as I think it is. And I think I am right about that it is powerful as I think it is. And but a year and a half ago, it was it still is, but it was very volatile. There was other assets that people were talking about the flippening. Ethereum was gaining all this steam. Ripple had come out, Tron, all these other cryptocurrencies, even like nation state cryptocurrencies. I think like one of the biggest things is just understanding its resiliency and like understanding like second layer solutions that can be built to solve the problems that I initially thought that Bitcoin had that I didn't think could be solved. Mm-hmm. Like things like Lightning Network, I think are just amazing that people are building right now that work that solve a lot of the issues that I would have said Bitcoin had and needed to fork 3-4 years ago. Now I'm like, I don't know if Bitcoin ever needs to fork. Like it just might be, it is, if you can keep building second layer solutions with privacy, with, potentially like smart contracts, with giving people the ability to, transact on a second layer and transact more efficiently and quickly, then like, what do we actually need in a cryptocurrency and in a universal store of value for now? So far, Bitcoin and the people who have contributed to Bitcoin Core, I think have been incredible in how they've run it and managed it. And yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest things, is just like learning about second layer solutions like Lightning and Liquid and others that are really helping evolve the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's really interesting how the new innovations change the dominant narrative of the time. Like the narrative of the time is can't scale. Innovation happens, then the narrative changes to something else. And I think what we're seeing now is the importance of the trust and immutability, like as a base layer, is really coming to the forefront. And then the technologies being built on top of that are trying to solve some of those issues that emerge. Moving on. When do you think the first central bank will purchase Bitcoin, if ever?
I think they already have.
I'm getting that response a lot.
Yeah, I personally think. I think the U.S. probably already has, and then I also think that a lot of countries already have, but haven't talked about it yet. I think that like reserves are a really interesting phenomenon that will happen in the future, of like when people start to use Bitcoin as a reserve over gold that they can't physically own because somebody else has it in their reserve. And then US dollars you can't have because it's like you can't control because it's somebody else's Fed that's controlling how much are in there. But right now the US dollars functions for most countries' sake as a stable coin, as a stable reserve. Mm-hmm. And so countries literally have US dollars in their reserve in case their own currency doesn't work. So or goes into long day. It's late over here. It goes into hyperinflation or just any sort of inflation to stable it out. People will buy US dollars. So I think that there's already, like, many governments have already probably bought Bitcoin, and many will continue to buy more Bitcoin. It'll really just be a percent that they have in their reserve, and different central banks will buy different amounts.
Yeah, I mean, it really seems inevitable for that to happen. Anyways, biggest mistake you've made with Bitcoin?
Selling any of it and buying anything, but I guess it's good. I kind of look at the buying as like an altruistic, feat of like you have to do it to show that it has value. But it's like I look back.
It's a rite of passage, I think.
Yeah,
buying something with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I regret all of those moments, but at the same time, I've bought some cool stuff that will, hypothetically be. I will have assigned a lot of value because I spent so much money buying it, that I will have value for the things that I bought with those with Bitcoin. I don't know about any other. I'm trying to think of any other mistakes other than selling. Yeah, that's probably about it.
How do you feel about Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin's creator, being anonymous and the coins that he, she, they likely have or control?
I think it's good. It's a good thing. It hasn't moved. If it ever moved, it would probably break a lot of Bitcoin, a lot of what Bitcoin is. I think the fact that it is anonymous is that there is like only a set amount of these things. It just changes the amount that's in circulation. So we just sort of treat it as like this sunk amount that we're probably never going to see. And I think it would be probably a good thing if like he, she, they never comes out of wherever they are, or if they're even alive.
Right. What have you learned about yourself, if anything, or how have you changed as a result of interacting with Bitcoin? We've talked about this obviously in our chat.
Yeah, great question. It's given me hope for humanity. I think I always wanted to live in a world that we were all connected. I grew up, my mom's Mexican, my dad's Jewish, Long Island Jew. And I just sort of like, I feel like my culture, my family, my life is just like, this sort of a hodgepodge of culture. And I also grew up in the South, which is very different from both of those cultures. And I always sort of attached identity to just like being a human and never really feeling like we shouldn't all be connected. And when I would go to school with people that were from different countries, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different religions, I always felt this deep connection to all of them, no matter how different they were than me and my background. And it was really sad to me when I started building technology professionally around like age 16 and realizing that I couldn't transact seamlessly. I could communicate almost seamlessly with people all around the world, but I wasn't truly able to interact with them and have commerce with them. And I do think, I believe this for a long time, that commerce drives peace. Commerce drives understanding. If we are incentivized to be friends, we are going to want to know each other better. And at the end of the day, most war, most hate comes from misunderstanding. So Bitcoin's the first thing that I've ever seen that is this economic incentive in order to bridge peace, to have two people trust each other and want to work together. And I do think it has the potential to bridge the entire world and to be a medium of exchange for the entire world. It's the first thing I've ever seen that truly has that like incredible scale and technology to be able to do that.
I love that, man. And someday in the future, when we do a sit down, we'll go down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin's impact on psychology, philosophy, society, because I love having those conversations. But for the time being, we'll move on. Would you ever sell the majority of your position in Bitcoin?
I don't think so. I mean, unless there was something else that convinced me it was better than Bitcoin, but I've held pretty strong. I'm not really a short-term thinker. I pretty much play the long game in all cases.
Nice.
And I think there would have to be a lot for me to believe that Bitcoin does not have value more so than other things, or something else has more value than Bitcoin.
Right.
And so if something came along that led me to believe that, then I won't say never, because I want to be open-minded always. But it would have to be something pretty compelling.
You're holding on pretty tight, basically.
Yeah, I'm a big believer.
Related to that, have you ever purchased other coins? If so, are you likely to do so again in the future?
Oh yeah, actually, maybe that's my biggest regret. When you trading Bitcoin for other coins that I've since regretted.
Yeah.
I mean, 3, 5, 4 years ago, I got all excited about all these other coins. I thought like, oh, there's all these scalability challenges to Bitcoin. I was building another company in like the e-commerce space, and I felt like it was like, oh, I want privacy, and so I want speed, or I want all these other things, and so all these other tokens came out, all these other coins came out, and I got really excited about like a lot of them, and so yeah, I bought plenty of shit coins, and plenty of maybe some of them will turn out to be projects, but so far I wish, to be honest, I just stuck with Bitcoin. So yeah, I think. Yeah, that's probably the best answer to that.
Yeah, man, I haven't, I have done that as well. Not thankfully, not to a large degree, but it's one of those things that, I regret, but also, Bitcoin always welcomes you back with open arms. Like everything's going to be okay. Just come back and it'll be fine.
I'm still here. Yeah. Yes, it might be more expensive, but it's still there.
Yeah. Most controversial or contrarian view or opinion on Bitcoin, if any?
Ooh, gosh, that's a great question. Most contrarian opinion on Bitcoin. Oh, earning is more important right now than any other thing. I think like people have to be incentivized to get into Bitcoin, and I think there's like still so much around buying. And you have to keep in mind the consumer, and most people are not investors. And so you're giving them this like volatile asset, and you're saying, hold on for dear life, and don't, and that's just like I think it's like a bad way to get involved. I think earning and what we're doing is the best, but I mean, it's also, sure. I'm biased in the company we're building. I just think having a little bit and just like putting your foot in by doing something you're already doing, which is shopping. I think it's just like it's such a better way to train people and to teach people about why Bitcoin is important. And then over time, and that's also very important for the merchants. And then over time, like we shift to payments when Bitcoin is ready.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. And what's missed in a lot of these conversations is the emotional roller coaster of being an investor in Bitcoin, and you completely remove that from the situation in a product and service like Lolli, because it's basically free money, and you don't really have to worry about it. It's you're not losing money via an investment. And we've all been there where we're checking the price and the chart and up and down, and like it's a really, being a hodler is a real emotional thing, and removing that element, I think, would really foster more rapid adoption.
Yeah, I totally agree. So more earners, more stack and sats, yeah, in my opinion.
Any reliable ways of spotting a paradigm shift?
I mean, I like building companies that have bird's eye views of spotting that shift. Mm-hmm. I think that because our users are at the forefront of adoption, they are just coming into Bitcoin. Like seeing a paradigm shift, I don't think is going to come from the institutional side. I think the institutional side will certainly move the markets, and it'll go up and down when countries get involved, when institutions get involved. But I think spotting paradigm shifts are really important at our level. Seeing at like how consumers learn about Bitcoin, like what questions they're asking, and understanding that consumer is so important. Like I can make a really strong argument that while Coinbase's customers have more money, ours are more important for understanding the paradigm shift because they are at the forefront of adoption. And the next 10 million people, the next 100 million people, the next billion people, I don't know if they're going to come on board from buying Bitcoin. I think they'll probably come on board from earning Bitcoin in some capacity.
Do you have a morning routine? If so, what is it?
No, I'm not a big routine person. I know that there's a lot of like founders that like swear by certain things. I actually I'm kind of an anti-routine person.
Try to mix it up.
I try to mix it up all the time, and we'll see if that in the future, if that's good. But like it's always served for me. If you couldn't tell, I have like really bad ADD, and I'm kind of all over the place. And it's sort of it's good for me in that I can do a lot of tasks at once, and I can think about a lot of things throughout the day, and I can context switch very actively. Which, as a CEO, that's what's really important, to be able to hop into different meetings and to make decisions very quickly on limited information. But as far as like routines go, yoga is probably my biggest routine, and I don't think I've actually talked about that very much. But that's like my zen. It's my place where I just like reset. I have like peace of mind and just feel really, really good. and have moments of clarity. I like I'm not a pothead, but I do smoke almost therapeutically. I think that is, arguably a routine. I think when I need to get outside of my head and I need to think big picture or bigger picture, and if I'm getting wrapped up in details, I do need to like zoom out a little bit. I love marijuana, and I'm all for like legalization of it. And I would say that is part of my routine. And then reading, I try to read a lot, but nothing like consistently. I think just like as I said before, looking for new sources of information and new sources of truth, and also trying to surround myself with as many like smart people as possible.
Right.
Right. And then basketball. Play basketball every weekend.
Nice.
So
I
I
love that, man. And I just got to ask this one follow up. I'm trying to move through these as quick as possible because I'm chewing up your time. But in a search for truth and the things you just mentioned, have psychedelics ever come into play in that mix?
No comment about. Yeah, I feel comfortable talking publicly about marijuana right now, but yeah, no comment.
Denver just legalized psilocybin mushrooms recently, I believe.
Oh,
But anyways, we'll save that conversation for another time. How do you define success?
Are you able to share your experiences?
If you got the time, yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Cool. I'm late for a call right now, but
sorry.
I'm enjoying the conversation, and you're asking great questions, so I don't want to like cut it short.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very open about my practice with it all. It's, I've interviewed a lot of people in the space from the scientific side and all that kind of stuff. So I think they're tremendously beneficial. And yeah, we'll talk about that some other time. How do you last two questions? How do you define success?
I guess I define it differently throughout my life. I think for me right now, it's about impact. How much can you positively impact the world by the things that you're doing every day? And to me, that's success. Are the things that I'm doing, are the things that I'm putting into the world going to make the world better? And is it going to lead to a better future? And I wake up every day and I confidently believe that. And then there's like, if you zoom in, there's other factors for success. Like, I don't like talking about like KPIs and stuff, but like, yeah, am I getting the merchants I was wanting to get? Do we have the users that we want to get on the platform? But yeah, I think the more interesting bit of success and more long-term thinking is about impact.
Yeah, love it. Alex, last thing, less than 30 seconds. This is just word association. I say a word, you hit me back with another one, all right?
Man, I love it. Testing me like 8:30 p.m. Yeah.
Satoshi Nakamoto. Come on.
Wait, just like I'm trying to make sure I know what to do. What's the game?
I say a word, you just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Word association. Yeah, you're one of your parents was in a psychological background, right?
Yeah. Good memory.
So Satoshi Nakamoto.
Oh, this is I don't. There's not one good word for that because you can't say leader because we don't have a leader.
There's something popping into your mind right now, though, right?
Yeah,
leader must have been it.
Leader, but there's nuance to saying leader because I think that every great thing in the world started with one person having that thought. Mm-hmm. And so I say leader with the caveat that there can be like almost this like servant leader that put this thing out into the ether, but not as like we follow this individual. So caveat, that was the first word I said, is that we needed, Satoshi Nakamoto to exist to give us Bitcoin. But yeah, the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that there are no leaders.
All right, we'll go with caveat for the word association answer to Satoshi Nakamoto. Government.
Slow.
Hash rate.
I got nothing.
The individual.
Powerful.
Security.
Important.
Stacking sats.
Lolli.
Fiat.
Control.
Altcoins.
Shitcoins.
Pizza.
Delicious.
Libra.
Adoption.
Gold.
Store of value.
Lolli.
Stacking sats.
And finally, Bitcoin.
Freedom.
Awesome. Alex, super sorry I chewed up an extra 20, 25 minutes of your time, but I really appreciate it. Just had such a great time conversing with you. I think at this point, everybody's going to know where to go to find out more. But if you want to throw out Twitter or website or anything like that, feel free.
Yeah, just lolli.com, lolli.com, and then try lolli is where we're at on Twitter. You know, as we talked about, super active. Always love to hear about anything from the community. And yeah, just keep us accountable. Keep asking for new merchants, better rates, everything. So and we'll keep giving it to people. So thank you so much for taking the time to interview. And yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And I look forward to a deeper dive on some of these issues when we meet face to face someday and do a live recording. But until then, all the best with everything related to Lolli and in your own pursuits. And yeah, we'll talk in the future.
Awesome. Take care, John.
Take care, brother. Cheers.
Bye.